Hey everyone, I'm the Casual Prince, and welcome back to another video. This is going to be a video of a series I haven't done in quite a while, which is my review of The Revenge of Maltazard, the book. The last time I reviewed a chapter was back in December, I believe, when I did the Revenge of Maltazard 10-year anniversary video. And it's been a while, and I don't know why, because reading these books and doing reviews of them is one of the best experiences I can have in relation to Arthur, because, once again, I've not read the last two books. So, for those of you who remember, we left off with Arthur just having used the vines, and we pick up exactly where we left off, although the situation is quite a bit different. Instead of landing in Max's bar, Arthur lands in Max's bedroom, and that causes him to land right in the bedroom with his 7 wives. Which is a nice little callback to the fact that Maltazard said in the first movie that he has 7 wives. Although in the movie version of The Revenge of Maltazard we don't actually get to see them. Mainly because, as you'll definitely see from some of the quotes in this chapter, like I always tell you, the books aren't meant for the same age range as the movies are. So Arthur lands in Max's bedroom, and the bamboo pole literally, like, smashes up half of Max's bedroom. So Max slams open the door, he's like, there's an intruder, I'm gonna kill them, and then he sees Arthur, and he's like, Arthur. So Max and Arthur reunite. I'm not really sure he's the person that you would want to see after just entering the Seven Kingdoms, although I suppose any friendly face is worth it. And then he's just like, yeah, come on, girls, this is the Prince of the First Kingdom. And then they really sort of inappropriately start, you know, getting around him and massaging him, and it gets very sexual very quickly. And I'm just surprised on how different the movies are to the books in some respects. But as usual, just like in the movie, he has to keep repeatedly telling Max, you know, the Minimoys are in danger, I have to get to them, I have to see that Selenia is okay. And eventually, Max is like, okay, fine, I'll give you a lift, but after that, you're on your own. And then he says, because it's Husband's Day, I believe. Yeah. And that apparently he's just got to be a good husband and spend it with all of his wives, and they'll confide in him, and yada yada yada. And he does also sort of subtly state that he could possibly be spending the entire day having sex with them. And once again, I'm just in awe of how it's just weird, because, like, Arthur and the Minimoys was cut down for us here in the UK. Like, all the romance scenes, all of the innuendos and everything, completely cut. And yet in this, it's just so blunt and so obvious, and it's just peculiar. But anyway, it's also interesting because this is the first time, and obviously, like I said, I've not read the rest of the Revenge of Maltazard book or the War of Two Worlds book, but it could possibly be the only time that we learn of Arthur's official last name, which is Begantol. For those of you who read my books, I have used the second name Husho just because I wasn't aware of this when I started writing Arthur 4, and I've just stuck to it ever since. I know it's not actually correct, because Husho is the name of Archibald and Rose married Armand, and Armand's second name, I presume, is Big Antol, meaning that Arthur's second name is Big Antol as well. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because I don't think it was ever shown in the movies or in the first 2 books. It's just interesting that we finally learn Arthur's name at this point. But anyway, so Arthur, the reason we learn Arthur's name is because Max is telling Arthur not to look into the eyes of one of his wives, and that leads into a favourite quote that I'll tell you guys in a second. And then he's just like, right to the car, and then we cut back to Armand and Rose, who are still driving away from the Susho household and back home. And it's at this point that they finally discover that Arthur is actually no longer in their car, and it's Alfred. Rose is really cold, so Armand just asks her to take the blanket off of Arthur, and of course when she does this, she finds that it's not Arthur, it is Alfred, and she completely freaks out, as you would imagine from Rose. And Armand is really not impressed. I'm sort of obviously it's not really shown a lot of them, because it only shows the bit where they realise, I keep saying shown, it's a book. It only describes the bit where they realise that Arthur isn't there. It doesn't describe their journey back. That'll probably be in chapter 11. But Armand really doesn't seem that concerned with the fact that his son, who he has treated like shit, is disappeared and is missing. He just doesn't seem as concerned, because the moment he realizes that Arthur isn't there in the movie, he's like, Arthur! Really, really afraid and worried. And I'm just, like I said, it could be shown in the next chapter, but at the moment, I'm just not seeing that. So yeah, and that's where the chapter ends. They turn around and they go back towards the Susho household. Now, favourite quotes. This one has quite a great deal of amazing quotes. First of all, the reunion between Arthur and Max. Arthur is like, Max? He blurts with hesitation, and Max responds with, yeah, it's me, I'm so glad to see you, you old bugger. And I won't try and do Snoop Dogg's voice. I can't, I honestly can't, and I will just butcher it if I even try. So I just like how, I just like this just because it is Max, and it's just, that line is so him. Although the thing about this is that obviously I've not read a lot of the first book on the channel as of yet, but in the first book, Max, obviously in the movies, Max almost tries to steal Selenia from Arthur, and we do see this, but in the books it's a lot more. He takes it to a higher level at the point where he's actively competing against Arthur in the bar scene to get Selenia. Of course, she ends up with Arthur, thank God. Let's not imagine a world where Selenia ended up marrying Max. That's not bear thinking about. But anyway, I just feel like there was never really... They never really resolved that little conflict that they had. As far as I can remember, it's been quite a while since I've read the first book, but as far as I remember, there was never really, Max was never, she's yours, you've won her, yada yada yada. There was never a resolution to their conflict, and I just feel like him being ultra mega, like, better mesh level friendly with him just doesn't seem right. Although, like, but I'm alright with it. Like, the lines that he says in this chapter, it does seem like him. He says a line, I see you're one hell of a I can't speak today. One hell of a sly boots. You came straight to me to steal away all my wives. Is your princess not enough for you anymore? So, you know, I suppose that's all the recognition we really need. Now, another one of my favourite quotes is where he actually says the names of his 7 wives. He says, Arthur, this is Leela, Lula, Layla, Lola, Laila, Loila, and Layla. And Arthur's only response is ooh la la. And when I first read that, I was pissing myself. It was, honestly, that I love Luke Besson's way of writing the books, because it's Arthur, but it's so different than the movies. And obviously, as a writer, I can appreciate the writing style that Besson uses. But anyway, after the whole situation with finally getting Arthur away from Max's wives, and when Max is sort of describing the fact that they'll have to spend time with them later, there's a line here that says, Arthur understands less and less, a few more years will have to pass before he ends up in a similar place. And that line is it's interesting because it bears information to the fact that one day Arthur will become more like Max. He will become a teenager, and he will have sexual relations with girls, most likely Selenia, and it's just interesting because obviously in the movies are intended for children, and that's never really alluded to, the idea that one day Arthur will grow up. It's sort of, his character is very in the moment, and that's sort of something that I aim to replicate with what's shown here. The glimpses into the fact that Arthur will grow up one day is something I aim to sort of explore in Arthur Returns, because while the Arthur in Arthur Returns has gone through some stuff that you guys don't know about yet, and will eventually learn, it's still Arthur, and I do still try to replicate what I believe Arthur would behave like if he was a young adult. So it's just interesting that Besson makes those little points. But anyway, and Lala is looking at Arthur like, really, her eyes are just so massive, and the gaze she's giving him is very, like, sad and alluring almost. And Max is just like, do not look into her eyes, because she can hypnotize you. And one of my favorite quotes, possibly of this entire book, just for the comedy of it, I saw a cobra committing suicide because of her once. Like, again, the book is so different. Mentioning suicide in the movie would be, it just wouldn't happen, because, you know, you can't really talk about suicide in a children's movie. Then again, there is the whole thing about Zera's deleted death scene in Lion King 2. We won't go into that. Anyway, and that's why that's why Max asks, like, what's your name? And then Arthur replies with Arthur Bigantol. So yeah, that's basically my favourite bits from this chapter. And yeah, chapter 10, pretty short, only 4 pages. It really makes you think sometimes, because Bearson's chapter are on average like 2,000 to 3,000 words. Some of the chapters I've written for Arthur 5 are over triple that amount, and like I'm just going off on a bit of a tangent here, talking about Arthur 5 and Arthur Returns. My chapter lengths are not really consistent. I like back in the old days of Arthur 4, because I always think that Arthur 4 is really sort of me developing as a writer. And there are parts of Arthur 4 that are very short, chapters that are very short, like, in my eyes, only a couple of thousand words. And I just think that, while I do not want to insult Bearson's writing, because he is the one that birthed the Arthur franchise, he gave us everything we know, and his writing, I wish I could write like he did. Now, I will be honest, I do think I'm a great writer, but I don't match up to Bearson in terms of writing. I wish I could write like him, and maybe as I continue to develop, then one day I will write like him, but I'm just saying he is a better writer than me. But don't want to insult his writing, but it's just that his chapters are just so short. And considering that you guys, I only update Arthur 5 like once a month, and sometimes even longer than that if I have work to do. I think it's only right that I make the chapters long, just so you guys have a lot to read. So you guys haven't been waiting like a month for something that you can read in like 5 minutes. That's why I made The Perfect Night like 11,000 words, because it is the perfect night when Arthur, Selenia, Dylan, Beda, they spend a night in the First Kingdom. That is the focal point. Before Mulder was introduced, that was what everything was building up to. Because the idea of what the adventure was going to be about wasn't even in, like, obviously it wasn't in Arthur's head. He didn't realise there was going to be an adventure. He didn't realise that he was going to have to face someone. I was purposefully making it so that was what I was making you guys think of. The 10th moon, the reunion of Arthur and Selenia, that was the focal point of where the story was going at that point. And that's why I made it such a big chapter, because that was what I'd been building up to for the very longest time. And for those of you who don't know, I a couple of days ago updated Arthur 5, so if you haven't gone and read it yet, then I recommend you do. But next chapter, spoilers for anyone who hasn't read it, next chapter will most likely, because there's not really a lot that happens in between the chapter I've just released and the next big event. In the next chapter, the next big event will be the first trial that is presented to Arthur by one of the Guardians. And that is a focal point that we've been building on for, like, obviously not as long, because The Perfect Night, I believe, was chapter 10, so we'd been building on that for 9 chapters. This is really something we've only been building on for 2, but still, it's the next major point in the storyline of Arthur 5, and I'm going to put a lot of effort into it, because the thing is, I find it hard to write stuff that's just build up. That's why stuff like The Perfect Night is better quality, perhaps, than some of the stuff that built up to it. Just because the main focal points are just more exciting to write, and I have better inspiration to write them. But, yeah, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, just in relation to Bearson's writing compared to my own. But yeah, this was chapter 10. I hope you enjoyed it, and next time, hopefully, we'll get to see Benamish, maybe, because if you remember, after Max and Arthur head out towards the First Kingdom, that is where they meet Benamish. Now, I don't even know, because so far things have been slightly different in terms of the storyline. So, once again, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't even know if Arthur's actually going to meet Benamish. I think he probably will. That seems a bit too much of a point to make up for the movie. So I think he probably will meet Benamish in the next chapter, or the next couple of chapters. Next chapter, I think we'll probably meet Replay, if he is a character in this. And the unicorns, and learn about Krobe, because we've not actually heard anything about Krobe. But once again, I do presume that we've just not heard anything of him as of yet, just because we've not entered the Seven Kingdoms properly. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching, everyone. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, and go check out my book, Arthur 5, on Wattpad, if you haven't already, because I updated it a couple of days ago, and you will want to check it out if you are an Arthur enthusiast. And of course, read Arthur 4 if you haven't done that, because you don't really want to go from Arthur 3 to Arthur 5, because then things just don't make sense. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and I will see you on another video very, very soon. Goodbye, everyone.